Okay.
All right. Wow, we are looking live. Are we live?
I've got to check real quick.
He's gonna check on his.
Wow.
Got my microphone. I got my coffee. As you'll like this, my wife has holiday coffee mugs, Tom,
Very nice.
which I really like.
Makes it very homey.
Yeah, you guys are good.
Yeah,
Now, I have one question.
Looney is
On
frozen
my
on the video, but he's
yeah,
frozen on the
uh,
video.
I do think we are live. There I am.
There you are.
Yeah, it sounds good.
It says it sounds good. I have to go do radio. John, you want to tweet this out?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to go do radio at noon, so we have time. We're not pressed for time, and this will be my show prep for today.
I love
So
it.
we'll let
Um,
the other thing they do in the podcast world, Joe Rogan doesn't have to worry about is we're gonna let people fill the room first. We're gonna let some people come in before we
oh,
give them, like a rock band doesn't open up with their best song. Bruce Springsteen doesn't open with "Born to Run," Tom, because there's people still in the parking lot. There's people who forgot their keys and they left something in the car. They left their vape pen in the car. So you don't open up with the best song. You kind of get the show going.
during the Born in the USA tour, the much ballyhooed Born in the USA tour, which is when he was at the height of his fame, he came out at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. I think it was the first concert, and that sat 94,516 people. And he forgot the words "Born to Run" because he doesn't sit around listening to his own albums all the time. We do, and now they have teleprompters and they have things on the stage to remind them of the lyrics.
Wow.
And yeah, that was kind of a big deal back in the day. It's a good thing it was before streaming.
What did sports
And
radio
yeah.
hosts do before teleprompters? Like,
Ooh,
what did
good question.
sports radio hosts do before they weren't able to read what other people wrote them in their teleprompters or the used to get handed notes. I remember every once in a while if we were on the air and it was something you had to tell me about, you would leave the room and come in and give me a note, and I'd be like, I'd act like, oh my God, Tom wants to talk about this.
Do you remember also back in the day you had to do all that homework and you'd have post-it notes for yourself and big bunches, your stack of stuff that you wanted to talk about, and usually you didn't get to half of it, right? How many things over the courses of the year did you move from day to day to day? A story, an evergreen story you always wanted to tell, and you never got to it.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I live out of a calendar. I have a black binder calendar that I live out of every day, and that's one of the Christmas presents I know I'm going to get every year. It's wrapped. It's my black binder with all my dates and everything that I write because I'm having a problem posting stuff in my phone, in my calendar, in the phone, because sometimes I just don't see it. It doesn't give me a big alert. So I'm now back to writing things down. Holiday party, client meeting, remote, all of that. Because if I don't write it down, I forget about it. The phone doesn't do a good enough job reminding me what I need to do.
Well, also, the phone, sometimes you're with the phone so much, I ignore my reminders
Yeah.
on the phones because I'm so used to ignoring alarms and ignoring reminders. I have what I call a good vibes list, what old school people call a prayer card. It's called a prayer card / good vibes list. It comes up at 11:11 every day. And I don't forget about that one. That's about people who are sick, people who have had a recent death in the family, whatever that need to be thought about that I maybe want to text and reach out to or just think about. I have that comes up at 11:11 every day. But there's other things that come up, and I just keep ignoring them. So that's why I've gone back to writing things down as well. The old-fashioned daily planner. Now, when we were together doing shows, you used to have this great organization. I never did this. This great organizational way of going about preparing for the show, where you would look at what you talked about last year and the year
Yeah,
before.
well, that's really interesting you bring that up. So I've saved all those calendars for 20 years, 25 years. So what I'll do is I'll look in my notes to June 18th or May 24th or whatever it is, and I'll remember something if it worked there. Now, most of the time it was breaking news, so that doesn't change. But if there was
Right.
something that worked well, I would drop it in there, or at least I remembered it, and it could come up in an anecdote. We could talk about it. I could say, hey, 7 years ago, this happened on this date. And that's just because of writing stuff down. And I remind other people, too, about writing stuff down, why it's so important. It's because if you save it, you'll be able to look back on your life. And one of the biggest disappointments I have in my entire career, in my garage, I have a bin of, I'm not joking, I'd say hundreds, not 1,000, but hundreds of little CDs and, just cassettes, mostly cassettes, and things that were taken from the radio that were important to me. A Bill Walsh interview, right? Or a Joe Montana interview, whatever. And it's just in a bin. And at some point, I got to digitize it, and I got to take it and I got to save it, just like photos and my wedding album and all this stuff. But at least I have it because I didn't throw it away. But it bothers me that I probably only have 10% of it or less than 5% of it. And I think people should learn that. The young people who are watching and listening, save the important things in your life. Oh wow! Wait, as we're talking, I'm gonna grab something in a moment. It's right here, and you won't believe it. So give me a second here.
Yeah, or you could do what my brother does: throw everything out and live for today.
You'll love this. So you're gonna love this.
I'll tease ahead.
I went to Florida to visit my parents. See this legal binder, and my sister, both my sisters, but my youngest sister had this, and this is all the press clippings of my dad, who was a fantastic athlete, and everything that he did in his life. And I started looking at some of it, and I just couldn't believe the treasure trove of information. And look at this, just some of the stuff here. Look at this, Bayside High School, Tom, and then 1956, right? And then it's got all of his press clippings and everything he has.
Had you ever seen any of it before?
Excuse me?
Had you ever seen any of it before?
Never saw any of it. It's old Yankee cutouts, old. It really is incredible. And look at this. My dad saved this. This was something that came in the newspaper. This is the 1961 Yankees. Now I'm gonna clean it up and fix it and frame it. But my point is, as I grab this, is that look at this. This is a newspaper from 1956, the actual newspaper. And he's on the cover of the newspaper here making a jump shot. And it's the actual newspaper. I can't believe this newspaper survived from 1956, and it's pretty good. So my sons and I are going to kind of clean all this up, mat it, frame some of the stuff. But if my dad didn't save this and my grandmother didn't save it from the 50s, now they should have saved the baseball cards. My dad had his twin brother had baseball cards from the early 50s that were thrown out. But the important stuff about them, my grandmother saved.
I pulled into the Black Whale in the 90s in Marina Del Rey. It was a prime ribs place. And there was a limousine or a Cadillac, and it had a license plate I used to D. And when you were talking about saving those old tapes, it made me think of this. I threw a lot of mine out because I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about what I used to do. Because I always want to keep doing interesting things. And I thought, well, I never want that license plate. And I walked into the Black Whale, and standing there at a payphone was former heavyweight champion Michael Dokes.
Oh, wow.
That's okay. But for me, I don't want to spend a lot of time in life talking about what I used to do.
3, 2, and 1. Welcome to the JT and Looney podcast. We're back. We're live. We're streaming on YouTube. We're on Twitter. We'll turn this into a podcast when we're done. And there is some breaking news. Bill Belichick took the North Carolina college football job, where I just want to give a hot Doritos flaming hot take. I'm bummed by this. Okay. I think this is a terrible move by Belichick, who's, I think, only 12 wins away, regular season and playoffs combined, of beating Don Shula's all-time record. You know, I care about records. I care about who's number one, not number two. And all he had to do was come back and wait for the right NFL job. He decides to bring Michael Lombardi, a guy I go back with 25 plus years, as his GM. And they're going to take the North Carolina gig and try to turn that into a pro NFL type of regime, which is fascinating, and build North Carolina like you'd build an NFL program with a GM with NIL money, donations, and all this. And that's going to be the swan song for the hoodie, Bill Belichick. And no one on God's green earth, no one in India, China, South America ever thought 2 months ago Bill Belichick would end up at North Carolina, the Tar Heels, Tom.
Well, in India, China, and South America, they think football is soccer. So, of course, they wouldn't think that. But here in America, where we enjoy what those people call American football, nobody here predicted that, of course. And this great sport that only we love. Now, here's what I like about it. Here's what you have wrong about NFL records. He's not in it for the NFL records. You know why he wants to be a coach? The same reason why Bronny wants to be a basketball player, and why cops in New York want to be cops because their dad was a cop, and why firemen want to be firemen because dad was a fireman. A lot of people want to do what dad did. Belichick's still doing what his dad did. His dad was a football coach. He wants to be a football coach, and he doesn't care where.
Well, there is some nepotism involved in this because reportedly part of the contract's going to state, from what I've heard, that his son, who's an assistant at Washington, will become the head coach when he leaves. He's got a 5-year deal reportedly. He's dating a 24-year-old. He's 72. Now,
I don't have the hell yeah button. Hell yeah.
Do you support men in their 70s, if they're properly divorced, not married or single, dating women who are 24, or would you rather see them date women in their 40s, 50s? Or how about a beautiful woman who's 60 or 58 as he's 72? He's got a college 24-year-old girlfriend as he takes a job at North Carolina. Wouldn't you think that'd be a bit of a distraction?
Why do rock stars date models? Why do people at his success level marry or date someone in their 20s? Because they can't. Are you kidding me? May-December relationships are beautiful. The younger person makes the older person feel vital and sexy again. And the older person gives the younger person wisdom. May-December relationships are beautiful.
So what I also don't like, you made a good point about the record. So he's short of Don Shula, but he's got 8 Super Bowls, and he's got 6 as a head coach, and Don Shula's got 2. So he's already a better coach than Don Shula, right?
Yeah.
In theory. And he's better than Andy Reid, who's really good right now. Andy Reid's fantastic, and Andy Reid might win another Super Bowl or 2. And I think Belichick, I have him higher up than Tom Landry. I have him in the Vince Lombardi category. If you have the Mount Rushmore of coaches in the history of the NFL, head coaches, remember, Mount Rushmore only has 4, not 5. My 4 would be Vince Lombardi, Bill Belichick, Don Shula, and then, wow, you got to go Chuck Noll, don't you? With the Steelers and the Steel Curtain with 4, you kind of got to go Chuck Noll. And that means I have no one of the modern era in there. Belichick's in there in the modern era.
Neither does the Mount Rushmore.
Good point.
So those aren't bad. Bill Walsh?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, would you take Lombardi off Mount Rushmore for Bill Walsh? I wouldn't.
No, you can't take Lombardi off Mount Rushmore because you just, for historical reasons, just the same reason you can't take Lincoln off or Jefferson. But you got him up there. Lombardi is already a Mount Rushmore. You can't bring him down. Like I want to take guys out of the Hall of Fame. You can't take guys out the Mount Rushmore. The Chuck Noll argument could be or the Don Shula argument is, he was a child star. He was good in the 60s and 70s, but he also coached in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, that's Shula's hard to move because he's got the all-time wins. He's got the Super Bowls. He's got everything you need. I don't think you can. It's tough.
And
And
people like to talk about nepotism, nepo babies. Yeah, there's a lot of Shulas out there in every coaching group. Shula's son, and grandsons coaching all over the NFL. And take a look at the last names of a lot of people coaching all over the NFL. You'll recognize those names. If there's any place nepotism thrives, it's in the coaching community. And good for them. I love them.
Tom, I
How
have
you're-
two. I have two kind of new nicknames. One is the Brick Tater. In YouTube, I'm able to put people in who are wise asses in timeout. They actually have a timeout button. You can time someone out for 30 minutes, a minute, whatever. So they call me the Brick Tater because if someone becomes a wise ass, instead of blocking them, and I got a big Twitter announcement I'm going to make live here on Twitter in a second. So the Brick Tater. And the other one is Raider Therapist. A lot of people calling me the Raider Therapist because the Raiders have lost 9 in a row. And if they don't win on Monday Night Football, that'll be 10 in a row. I was also with the team when Derek Carr came into the organization, and he lost his first 10. He was 0-10 to start the year, so I was there for that. And I know you're always concerned about myself, my physical, my mental health. Man, out here in Vegas, dude, we're running a monster losing streak. And what I've been struggling with this, because you're going to be my therapist, what I'm struggling with is I don't tank. It's a massive topic in my life now because some of the greatest fans in sports are Raider fans. And they literally are telling me they want to lose on purpose to get a mythical draft pick. Someone who hasn't played yet in the NFL, who could be this. He could be Jamarcus Russell. He could be Peyton Manning. He could be Shador. It could be Cam Ward. So I put up this protective wall. I'm a tough guy. We're not going to tank. We're going to try to win every game. But the Raiders are sitting with the 1 pick right now with the Giants. How should I handle this topic?
Well, these are professionals. The coach doesn't want to lose. The coach wants to keep his job. The professionals on the team aren't going to lose. So billionaires make more money. People who are thousandaires and maybe millionaires. There's not that many millionaires on any NFL team. People would be surprised. Over time, they could make millions, but they usually only play a few years. They're not going to lose their jobs in order so a billionaire can get a first-round draft pick. So it's tough to tank. You got to sit those good guys. If you do, and so I'm never for. Here's another reason why I bite you, as you know. You can end up with the 3rd pick, and sometimes when you end up with the 3rd pick and you're disappointed because your team didn't tank, you end up with Michael Jordan, who was not the first pick, and you end up with or Brock Purdy. Mr. Irrelevant. You can end up with a much better quarterback or a much better first-round draft pick because you didn't lose on purpose. And the first 2 teams that get to choose a player, if you have the 3rd pick, or the first team that gets to choose the player, if you have the 2nd, chooses a bust. You get the good guy.
It's a good point you bring up because the last 2 drafts, the quarterback drafts, this past one, Jaden Daniels looks to be better than Caleb Williams. He was the 2nd pick. Yeah. But that's a long play out. And then the year before, C.J. Stroud was a better pick than Bryce Young. So the 2nd pick was better than the 1st. Look, if the Raiders, you could say this for our listeners in New York, if the Giants got the 2nd pick or the 3rd pick and they took a quarterback, you still got to develop the quarterback. You got to pick them, but you got to coach them, develop them, surround them with a good offensive line. And look, this pains me to say, Bo Nix. I've seen Bo Nix now play live and a bunch on TV. He got picked 12th. And Sean Payton didn't trade up to number 1 to get him or number 2. He waited because he ran Russell Wilson out of town. How'd that work out? Russell Wilson's a lot better than Bo Nix and he's having a better year than Bo Nix. They ran him out of town because they didn't like him. He was weird. He loved his wife. He kind of did fake fist pumps. They didn't like him. Sean Payton, who likes Kenny Chesney and likes drinking, but with his drinking buddies, didn't like Russell Wilson. But they ended up getting Bo Nix. And the next pick was Brock Bowers. The next pick. And the Raiders got Brock Bowers, who's a brilliant player. Could be Offensive Rookie of the Year. But Denver got their quarterback, and they were patient, and they didn't go give up the farm in the draft to go get him.
Yeah, and that's what, I've always said that about Russell Wilson. I thought everyone was brain dead last year about Russell Wilson. I was looking at his numbers. His numbers were fine all year long. And did people forget his way to worm his way out of trouble? And, because I know my elusive running quarterbacks and didn't throw the ball 70 yards down the field. after what you thought was certainly going to be a sack, which is what the great quarterbacks do, the Super Bowl winning quarterback. There's nothing that surprises me about Russell Wilson. And you want the square guy running the team. You don't want the goofy guy. Let the goofy guy be the linebacker, the wide receiver, your tight end. Quarterback, you want him to be normal. You don't want him talking to space aliens or doing ayahuasca. You want him normal. Or you want them left brained like the engineering student, not the communications majors and the frats. You can't have them as the quarterback. And so that's Russell Wilson's personality. That's a successful quarterback's personality.
Well, nailing the quarterback's going to be a big topic out here in Vegas. It's going to be a big topic in New York as the Giants got rid of Daniel Jones and ate all that money. And look, there's always 6 or 7 or maybe 8 head coaching jobs available after every season. There's also always 3 to 4 quarterbacks. It used to be wait for your quarterback. Lamar Jackson was the last pick of the first round. The last pick of the first round. Think of 31 other teams that didn't take him. But we're not
32.
Yeah.
JT, 32 other teams didn't take him. Baltimore didn't take them. They took somebody else, and then they traded up to get him.
Good point. So I'm a big believer in getting the quarterback early, the years you can. Like this is a year we're out here, the Raiders can get a quarterback. They have to get a quarterback. They have to get a face of the franchise. Because of the global syndication success of Benny versus the Penny on Peacock and NBC, I know you're all prepped up from your show today, so I'm going to throw some NFL topics out here that I'm seeing. Okay. So let's start with, I don't think the Vikings can catch the Lions, but they're only 1 game back. So if Detroit, who's decimated with injuries, Aiden Hutchinson, other players are out, if they trip up 1 game, Minnesota can surpass them and have the 1 seed, and Detroit would be a wild card team after leading the league all year. I'm going to think that, I believe they're safe. I think Detroit's going to be the 1 seed, get the bye week. I still have the Lions as my Super Bowl pick to win Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans.
Lions have the best defense in the NFC. And we're not even talking about the offense. They're ahead 28-0 at the end of the first quarter in every damn game, it seems. So that's the one thing that we don't always look at when it comes to we don't look at offensive lines, which they have an amazing offensive line, and defense. And that's pretty much who's going to take you to the Super Bowl. The Lions are a great pick for the Super Bowl, as are the Vikings, with the number 2 defense in the NFC. I only look at how many points you're giving up. It's the only defensive statistic that matters to me. And so both of those teams are kind of sitting pretty when it comes to whether or not they have the wild card or the division when it comes to the inability of the teams they play to score points.
All right. So depending on when people are consuming this, maybe in the next day or two, the Niners are playing the Rams. This is a massive game. The Rams beat the Bills from your dirt. The 7-1-6 traveled to the 2-1-3 and lost, which to me is we can do an hour on that topic. How the Bills, who I think can win the Super Bowl, also can't beat the Rams and Puka. So you're going to win the Super Bowl in Buffalo. You're going to start buying plane tickets when you can't beat the Rams in LA. So that's a topic. And the Niners, if they lose.
That time of the year to have some defensive issues. If they have defensive issues, that may be an anomaly. It may not. We'll see.
So the other point becomes, can the Bills, they lost the 1 seed. So they were 1 game behind Kansas City. I think Kansas City is going to lose a game. They almost lose every game they play. Every game Kansas City plays, they're about to lose. They could be a 6 or 7 win team or an 8 or 9 win team instead of a 12 win team. So Buffalo's lost the 1. They're not getting it back. So Buffalo, if they want to win the Super Bowl, will have to go on the road to their House of Horrors, Arrowhead, instead of playing that game in Orchard Park, New York. Care to comment on that?
Well, yeah, here's the thing. Maybe the weather will be, remember, if you have to play in Orchard Park, New York, and the wind is swirling and it's snowy, it's swirling and it's snowy for both teams. Well, maybe they'll be less of a disadvantage than one might think for the Bills playing in Kansas City, just because maybe it'll be a little bit sunnier in Kansas City during the playoff game than it would be in Buffalo. That's treacherous to play in for the Bills as well.
So if the Niners lose to the Rams, and I think the Niners are going to beat the Rams, I really believe the Niners are going to snap out of it and they're going to start winning games here. And they're going to win the games they have to. But this is, if they lose this game on Thursday Night Football, they are completely eliminated. Not mathematically, but pretty close to it because they'll be 2 games behind Seattle. They'll be behind the Rams. They'll lose this tiebreaker. So I think you're going to see the Niners go balls out on Thursday Night Football and play this game like it's a playoff game. So I expect the Niners to win this game 24-21. I think the Niners hold on. I think there's going to be Stafford down the stretch trying to win the game. But I'm going to go 49ers to win this game. How do you see it?
And I see. Well, I think the Rams are probably pretty sore from that game with the Buffalo Bills, the high-scoring game with the Buffalo Bills. It was a short rest. I think it's just so tough for them to come back from the Buffalo Bills out of the San Francisco 49ers, who have a lot of talent despite their struggles. I think the 49ers will pull it out because here's another reason. The Rams are like a box of chocolates. They look great one week. You never know what you're going to get. And then the next week, they're back to playing mediocre football. They've been like, and now it's just a 4-day rest. So I would not surprise me to see the 49ers win the game because every time we think the Rams have turned the corner, oh, they got a great quarterback, they got a great coach, Tuca and Cooper Rush. I'm not Cooper Rush and Coop. They come back and they lay an egg. So I think the Rams lay an egg.
All right, so a couple other NFL topics I want to get to quickly. We touched on Belichick going to North Carolina. These other teams. The NFL decided that they're going to go to Berlin at the owners' meeting. I'm one of the few guys that love NFL European expansion because I catch a free trip every 3 or 4 years to Europe. And as you know, I'm very serious about my job, but when I get on the ground in Europe, I become a tourist. And I run around and I go to the pubs and I sightsee and I get to see countries like this. But, you know, the NFL now is really, really pushing this, Tom. I mean, they're going to put a lot of games. South America worked big for the Packers and the Eagles for television. London works. It does. Every game sold out at Wembley and Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It worked well in Germany. They're going to Ireland. Are you for more global expansion for the NFL?
Every time the NFL changes the rule and I don't like it, I end up being wrong.
Yeah.
And there's so many things they've changed over the years, and I didn't like it. And they have a pretty good model when it comes to business success. I don't like the idea. I've never met a European friend, and I live in a city where there's a lot of Europeans and who understands football. We don't seem to get it. My friends like every other sport, but they don't seem to. I'm just surprised that will it. I think they like the novelty of having football, American football, as they call it, in a stadium every once in a while as a fun thing to do, and they have more free time over there. But I don't think in the long run it will work in Europe. And I think what I don't like is taking away the home game from a great NFL fans in America. I don't like that.
Yeah, that's really a great take on that at the end because no matter who you are, you're losing a home game and your fans in your home city are missing that game.
And there are cities like Green Bay, Wisconsin, Buffalo, New York, Cleveland, Ohio, that aren't like Los Angeles or New York or Dallas, where there's 800 other things happening all the time and Broadway shows or whatever. There's not Broadway shows to go to or a lot of other things to do in Buffalo, New York. There's nothing else to do in Buffalo, New York other than drink because it's cold and you're miserable. You got to go to the Buffalo Bills games. It's a family event. It's an incredible event. And there's certain cities that should not have those home games taken away from them.
All right, let's bring in Cranky Yankee losing Juan Soto. The largest sports contract of all time is not Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. It's not Lionel Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo. It's not Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani. It's now Juan Soto, who spurned my Yankees, kept Scott Boras, the evil guy, kept rising the tides in the price. And then Steve Cohen, the owner of the Mets, who has more money than any other individual owner in baseball, said, I don't care. Whatever the number is, go higher. Just like a game of poker. I'm all in. No, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to take a marker. And for one of the first times in my life, the Yankees have lost players to free agency in the past. but they've never lost a player due to money. And the Yankees went out even far, they went out 16 years to the 15 years. It comes down to about $5 million bucks. But reports are the Yankees wouldn't throw in a suite. The Yankees, no, we're not giving you a suite. The Mets did. So Soto's going to play in Queens instead of the Bronx, Tom, and he's not playing with the Dodgers. He's not going to the Red Sox, not going to the Cubs. How big of a story is this in L.A. where you reside?
Well, it was a big story, but I don't, Los Angeles Dodger fans, in terms of not just entertainment value with the Dodgers, just coming off a World Series, probably a little bit spoiled, didn't necessarily want to get greedy like sometimes the New York Yankee fans are for the best players, and that's okay too. Everyone wants the best players on their teams, even if your teams can buy it. And so many of the ancillary players that weren't making a lot of money, like Tommy Edmonds, Teoscar Hernandez, did such a great job and Kiki Hernandez. Those were the guys that a lot of Dodger fans were hoping, for sentimental reasons, that would come back more than getting Juan Soto.
Yeah, for the Yankees, they put Max Fried, the pitcher from Atlanta. They gave him $200+ million over 8 years. Desperation because they lost Soto. I will say this. My youngest son put it best. He said, Dad, these deals usually work one of two ways, and he's only 21. He says either they end disastrously. Player gets injured. Player, it's good for 3 years or 4 years of the 15 years. You got the back end of that contract is an albatross, and you can't wait for it to end. Or it ends with Soto winning 2 World Series. 15 years, you better get 2 World Series. You're definitely going to get one because the owner's out of his mind and going to buy everybody if he bought Soto. So you're going to get 1 World Series with the Mets. The question is, can you get 2 or 3 and have something like that, and then it completely pays for itself?
Boy, how many years does it last? There is a rule in the talk radio format, the spoken word format, which we're doing now, and that is never ask the guy you're on the air with a question that he cannot answer.
Oh, I can answer. I'll try.
Well, you might be able to answer this one because it's about Alex Rodriguez. How many years was his contract with the Rangers supposed to be when it was the biggest contract
That's
ever?
a great question. Maybe someone in the chat on our YouTube channel can come in and tell me. I think A-Rod's contract with the Texas Rangers was probably 10 years.
Yeah, something
I'd
like
say
that.
10. Yeah, I was one.
And he was there a few years, and he was gone.
Yeah.
And so this is what happens with these contracts anyway, is even the guaranteed contracts, they sit down and say, oh, come on, we want to get out of this. And then a lot of times the player wants to leave as well. And they work something out. He's not going to be there all those years.
Yeah, that's a big one. I again, none of those contracts last that long. No debate on that one. A couple of other side things before we get rolling here. I got to do another show, and you're busier than anyone. You watched the Elvis documentary on Netflix, which I watched and turned you on to. And
yeah,
I a couple of takeaways from you on that, because I went back and watched it again. I watched it twice. I thought it was so unbelievable.
Return of the King, the fall and rise of Elvis Presley.
What'd you think?
Well, I didn't know that. What's incredible is, he almost, it was like Mark the Bird Vidris, what a shooting star Elvis was from 1954 to 1956, 2 years. And then gone in the Army. And then while he's in the Army, rock and roll comes along. It's the Beatles and the Stones. And so his manager has him make cheesy movies. And he was just a musician at heart. And the great thing about this special, it's just so good. Oh, well, the music. And they were going to do a cheesy comeback special with skits. And, he was singing Old MacDonald Had a Farm in the movies in the 60s. Well, the Stones and Beatles and all these, and the Who and Led Zeppelin are doing this amazing music. And he was a musician. He wanted to be doing music. But he didn't have much control of his career for a while. Then they're going to do that special, and they're going to do cheesy skits with Old MacDonald Had a Farm music. But the producers hear Elvis in his dressing room with some other musicians just playing for fun. And they hear him, and they think, no, this should be the special. Serendipitous. So just, no. And they had to talk his manager into it. No, it's got to be about music. And then they decide, put him in the jacket, put him on the stage, have him sing, and put his old band back together. Let's know his personality. People didn't know his personality other than movies. They didn't really. It was a form where you got to sit down and talk to the camera and talk about the people in his band. And he's just the best looking guy in the room. He lost 20 pounds for it. The most commanding stage presence, and got to remind people what he was like in the 50s. And it was brilliant. It was brilliant. And the music was great. And he was terrific.
Yeah, first off, Colonel Tom Parker, who put him in all those movies and was the first ever creator of merchandise, from the buttons to the
Mhm.
T-shirts to the dolls, and was ripping off Elvis behind his back the entire time. He was taking more money than Elvis, but Elvis was making so
Yeah.
much money that he was able to buy mansions and, Graceland and all that. Give his friends cars, right? Give them all Cadillacs. 'Cause he was making a ton of money. The takeaways for me were Colonel Tom Parker putting him in all those Hawaiian movies and all the cheesy movies when he should have been recording more. And, they built that machine to the point where the movies got up to 6 or 7 a year. A year for a movie. Usually a movie, you do one movie a year or two. They were printing them out.
Right.
You mentioned Elvis being in the army and how mentally that was difficult on him, sleeping in a bunk, and the whole world can't hear him, including Germany, where he could have been performing for everyone in the army with him. So he had to shut down his
Right.
career mentally and physically, which was tough. But the 68 special, which I have on DVD, is one of the greatest vocal performances in the history of music. That was on a soundstage in Burbank. Okay, I was on a soundstage in Burbank, and the
Yep.
way they recorded that and the way Elvis's voice was at the time, and it was recorded live to tape, right? It's live. They're recording it to tape, and we have it to
Right.
this day. I don't think you could ever find a vocalist in the pinnacle of his career with that much pressure on him to perform a 10 out of 10, a perfect 10, than Elvis Presley for the 68 comeback special. It was brilliant.
And the lighting and the sound for the 60s, which wasn't always the best, they got it right.
Yeah.
The sets, the lighting, the sound was incredible. And you're really happy that he got back to being, once you see the story, back to being a musician. And as he was taken away from that. And, musicians, what's interesting is he never, a lot of people of that era didn't write their own music. The rock and roll people that came along started singing about what was going on in the world and writing their own music. They were their own poets, which was something that, interestingly, he never did, but he didn't need to. It was just a different era where they found great songs. They sang, and that final song that he sang in front of the orange lights with the Elvis, it was, you're right, it was one of the great vocal performances you could ever see. And, he was before my time. So the biggest thing I remember about Elvis was his death.
Yeah.
So, and that's when I realized how big he was when that happened. And he was only 42, which is amazing. If science had come along, if we knew more about addiction, etc., we could have had him much longer. And and maybe he wouldn't have been the icon that he was if he lived longer. But who cares? It would have been nice to have him around longer.
One more thing we'll do on this platform, because if Stephen A. can talk politics, you better believe I can. And you can. So I said this, and I'll say this going forward, and I want to get credit for this. If you're building out your administration, if you're building out your team, Republican or Democrat, you do not go to CNN or Fox News and go outside their weekly lineup and go to their weekend lineup and hire their weekend hacks who are on the weekend. Nothing wrong with being on TV or radio, but if you can get off the weekend shift and work prime time. So the Fox and Friends weekend experiment of everybody on Fox and Friends weekend, we're going to try to get confirmed on Capitol Hill for some type of job with little to no experience. I believe that will fail, just like if a president to the left wanted to go to the CNN or MSNBC weekend cavalcade of talent.
Right. Nick
and
Wolf,
hire
that's our
them.
Secretary of State. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think another thing people need to realize with politics is don't be so dramatic. Don't get so emotional from two guys who think, whoever screams loudest is right. Nevertheless, and two guys who get really emotional about their teams and sports. But you have the ability to, and same thing for both. There's been plenty of times you and I have voted for the guy who lost or the woman who lost. And we go about our business the next day thinking, well, I got to wake up the next day and take care of my own shit. I'm the general in this life. I not only control what happens in my life and I am responsible for everything that happens, I'm also responsible for my emotions and how I react to things that are beyond my control. And so, if somebody that you don't like is elected president, well, just then don't follow politics for 4 years. And there's plenty of other great interests in life. Follow those interests, and you certainly emotionally can react the way you choose to things that don't happen, things that happen that are beyond your control.
Great segue to my last topic. I'm proud to announce on the JT the Brick platforms, including Twitter at JT the Brick, that I'm doing the 10 days of unblockage on Twitter. So for 10 days, I'm going to unblock all the people that were heinous and rude and nasty to me for no reason, or slid into my DMs or said something bad. I am now unblocking, Tom, a good 20 to 30 people throughout the holidays. So starting today, I am unblocking people that were blocked. And we're talking about people who've been blocked for 6, 7 years. You talk about scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. This takes a
Wow.
while. And I'm going to do that out of the kindness of my heart and give people an opportunity to get out of social media jail. I'm going to give them a pardon. So I haven't come up with the nickname for this, but it's my 10 days of pardoning people, and to try to have a cleaner and healthier brand on social media. I'm going to do that.
It's excellent. Another way to really do better with your life, as I've always encouraged you, is don't read comments.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't have to do that because I never blocked anybody.
You've never done it. You've never done a Tim Kawakami and blocked someone. You've never done it. You've never done one blockage in the history of your Twitter.
There's a couple of crazy people that I like to follow on Twitter that I don't want to mention their names because I don't want to get blocked because he's one of them. He gets way, way, way too involved with his thumbs and tweeting back at people. And I mean, he's a talented writer. Just write, and break your news. Stop reading. Stop trying to see what other kids at school are saying about you, and going into the lavatory and put your knees up on the toilet and shutting the door to listen to see what they're saying about you. That's what reading comments is like. If you're oversensitive and you can't handle it, which I might be in that category, then don't read them. You know, when I started not reading comments, the Kaepernick thing, people were getting so upset. If you stuck up for Kaepernick, if they couldn't, like, you got to like the Rolling Stones, you got to stand for the anthem. Remember, I made that analogy, and I thought, oh, this is getting too nasty over a guy that doesn't want to stand for the anthem. So
yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that topic, because we started the podcast, the stream, about saving stuff that we've done throughout our life and writing it down and all that. When I got hired, I've been on the radio in San Francisco most of my career, and they hired me to do a local show. And I went up there, and I didn't have to live up in San Francisco, but I had to be there 5 days a month, which was unbelievable. I stayed at the W. They paid for it all. I had a per diem. Only had to do 3. So I was doing that, and the first day I started was the day he took a knee. And like me on the radio, I went on the air and I destroyed him. Me, Mr. Patriotic. How dare you take a knee? But you want to talk about being tone deaf, because I believe what I said. I don't broadcast.
Right.
I totally believed it at the time what I was saying, and I'm not into kneeling and all that. I'm not sports.
Right.
Never been that guy. But I didn't read the room. I was doing that. I was doing that in downtown San Francisco. And I'm sitting there and I do the first show, and it's like a 3-hour show, and I come out of the studio, and people in the building were listening in their offices or whatever, and they were looking at me like, who the hell is that freaking lunatic? That is one of the few, I don't remember the Bill Walsh interview or, some of the other things I do, but I remember that first day on 95.7 The Game, eviscerating Colin Kaepernick, and he never played football again. Never played again, and my theory was very simple on that. He never wanted to play football again. If he did, he would have been out in a yard every day throwing spirals on YouTube.
Well, you
I,
forgot one thing. And the same thing happened to Gruden. Old men using email. He won millions and millions and millions of dollars from the NFL because old men got on email saying, don't hire Kaepernick. And we never got to really find out about that because it's part of the deal. But there was a collusion not to hire him. And that's why he doesn't need to work again. He made all the money that he would have made in that lawsuit.
All right, so finally, this is something my son put together. It's a live stream, so we're going to be able to put it on all of our platforms, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and then Tom Looney is going to take it and throw it into our podcast that you can get wherever you download your podcast. This was kind of a test run today. We wanted to make sure our microphones were okay.
Yeah.
Looney's been very patient with me with tech support over the decades. So we kind of got this thing locked in now. I think it's easy to do. And what I like about this platform is we can hit one button and then we go live everywhere. And then when we're done, we can send it out individually to where we want to put it up, including the podcast. We can get it on iHeart, Spotify, wherever our podcast lives, the JT and Looney podcast. And we're going to have an announcement with this podcast too, because we're going to be taking back control and doing a couple of different things video-wise and all that. But good catching up with you today, Tom, after your TV show and before my radio show.
Always. It's so much fun playing with microphones. And I always think the vice principal is going to call and say, okay, we caught you. Got to go back and do a real job now. But so far, it's still working out pretty good for us.
Hey, hold on 1 second because I'm going to release, and I want you to see this. I went to the rodeo. And I have to release my rodeo photo of me. So I'm sending it to you now via text message. And last year, Charles Woodson took my rodeo outfit and he superimposed his logo on it and all that and put it out there. And it was really
funny.
good. So we're gonna try to do this later today. Tell me when you got the rodeo drip. This is I went to the rodeo the other night, it's pretend Yellowstone. I was pretending that I was in Yellowstone. It was kind of Halloween.
Oh, great picture.
Yeah, it was kind of Halloween. The boots, the hat, the belt buckle, all that.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, it's definitely Halloween for a Long Island boy to be dressed.
Yeah, as I put it up here for those to see exclusively on our stream. So I'll put this out later today. And that's my new rodeo drip. In the last month, I've been to Formula One and the rodeo in the sports and entertainment capital of the world. Let that sink in. Formula One and the rodeo. So your other favorite sports talk hosts are not doing that. They're not courageous enough and brave enough to do that. And my mind is still expanding in sports, which I love.
Yes, and you've always had a theory. It's mine too, but you put it into words so beautifully, and I've stolen it. And that's go-to memories. Don't wait for memories to come to you.
Absolutely.
And you're always doing that.
Great to see you, buddy. We'll do it again pretty soon. Thanks for everybody who's here. The viewers that are here. We'll shoot this out later today.